As participants are streaming in, we'll give it a few seconds. Grab a cup of coffee, settle in. All right, well, people are continuing to stream in, but at this point, I will welcome you. Good morning, Crossroads Nation. My name is Skip Nelson. I'm a financial advisor with 𝙬𝙤𝙤𝙀 Financial, and I will be your host this morning. We are thrilled to have you. So glad you could join us. We've got a great morning planned for you. So again, grab a cup of coffee, settle in for a wonderful, informative gathering this morning. I've got a lot of things that we're going to cover. Got a great speaker, and Dave 𝙄𝙢𝙥𝙧𝙚, who's going to speak on a great topic. I've heard Dave before. He's a great presenter. We're going to see a video. We're going to go through resources that Crossroads has got for you in your job search, free resources, tons of them. I'll go over those at the end. So lots of really cool stuff. So buckle up. We're in for a fun time together. If you do have questions along the way, David is willing to answer them. So please just put them in chat, and he will be more than happy to do so. I'd like to start as we dive in with a word from a book called How Long, O Lord, How Long? And stick around also. I'll tell you at the end how you can get a free copy of this book, which is a really wonderful devotion for people in job transition. And we all know that if we've been in job transition, I certainly have, that it can be very challenging. And how many of you are work out in some way? Maybe you already this morning have gone for a run or hit the gym or whatever. But for those of us that work out, or at least try to on occasion, at least faithfully once or twice a month, more than that, hopefully. But the thing that I find that not only with working out for our muscles, which is hard to do, and it can hurt when you work out as you're kind of pushing yourself, but faith is also a muscle. And job transition can certainly challenge us in our faith. It certainly did me, pushed me, because a lot of it was things that I didn't necessarily want. And the book talks about when we're faced with a challenge in life, God frequently does bail us out. He is there. However, the help comes in God's way, and worse yet, if I dare say it, at least from a frustrating standpoint that I found, in God's timing, which I found frequently wasn't mine. And I'm like, God, what's the problem? I've got this figured out. Just do it the way I want it. And that's frequently not how it works. And that can be really, really frustrating when God's timing is different than our own. And frequently in my job transition, I just kind of wanted to get the memo, right? I mean, could you give me a hint as to what the timing is here, God? And a lot of times that memo doesn't come. And so ultimately what it relies on is faith, right? But our muscle is being tested in job transition. Maybe something we didn't look for, we didn't want, it's scary. What are we going to do about money? How long is this going to take? What am I going to find something? Am I going to like what I find? Whatever, all the questions we go through, it requires faith. We have to step out and have faith that God has got this. And that can be hard when we don't really know where we're stepping out. But it forces us to kind of work that muscle, doesn't it? Even in times we're not quite as comfortable. James 2:17 says, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. So it's not about being in job transition and just like, well, okay, God, land me, and do it now. That's not how it works. The path may not unfold the way we want, but have faith and work that muscle. God is there, and he has got your back, but it just may not be on your timing or what you had in mind. Lean into him, though. He is there, and you are not alone. and keep working that muscle. And I have found many times that the result will be something better than you could even imagine, because it's not just about you, it's about God, and he can see things beyond what we can. And lean into him, and he will guide you to a job better than you can imagine. So join me in prayer. Well, you kind Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for David and the other presentations we have this morning. Just ask that you bless those that are presenting, and bless each person on this call, those that are working their muscle and not exactly sure where it's leading. Lord, just help them feel your presence in this journey, and lead it to the conclusion, the wonderful conclusion that you already have in store. In your kind and heavenly name, amen. So next, we are going to look at a video that is put together by a preacher, man of faith, Bobby. It's Jackie and Bobby is the ministry, and it's a short video, but it's an interesting one, talking about our job is not our identity. And for many of us, it feels like it is, especially when it's taken away. And that can be a very frightening thing when kind of our identity disappears, but it's not our identity. And Bobby is going to talk about that, and really where our focus should be as far as what our true identity comes from. So we'll view that, we'll come back, and then I'll introduce David.
Hey, this is Bobby Angel with Ascension Presents. I want to talk to you today about not identifying with your job. Now, this is really for guys or girls, but I think for men especially, there's a temptation to identify ourselves with our work, our job, that we become our job. Like that becomes our identity, which isn't always a great thing. When we usually introduce ourselves to someone else, we'll say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, what do you do?" The first thing out of our mouth sometimes is, "What do you do?" As if what your work is identified with your worth, or this is the most valuable thing about you, or this is the core of who you are. What do you do? Now, it's a great thing to work. It is a noble thing. It's a God-given thing to provide, to till the soil, to, again, provide for our families. The problem is that, again, you are more than just that. You are more than just your work. What happens if you get an injury? What happens if your body shuts down or you get laid off? Who are you then? And a lot of people will go through some kind of crisis, some kind of more than just I lost my job. It's who am I without this job now? If an athlete gets injured and they've devoted their entire life to a said sport, then it's crushing. It's like, who am I if I'm not a soccer player or a football player? And that can be same thing with your work. Who are you outside of your work? Another problem with identifying with your work is sometimes your job may not be the manliest job, and we have these stereotypical manly jobs like, architecture, lumberjack, anything that wears flannel. And if you're not that, it's like, is my job worth as much? And it's really, again, what are you bringing to the table? Because you are more than just your 9 to 5 or however many hours you're putting in. It's scary to strip off that identity, but in that we rest in who we really are. My grandfather was a guy in New York who would work 3 jobs at any given time to help put his family through Catholic education. He was a firefighter. He would be a limo driver. He'd be a hearse driver, usually the same vehicle back in the day. Don't know if they would clean it out. That's neither here nor there. He told me once that, listen, jobs come and go. Invest in your family. When I was in the throes of vocation discernment and wondering what God had for me, he told me, listen, jobs will come and go. Invest in your family. Now, especially for we of faith, we believe that, yeah, our work is important, but our identity rests in so much more underneath. In Colossians, it says, you were raised with Christ. And in John 1, it says, you have become children of God. In Ephesians, we have adoption through the sonship of Christ. We have been adopted into the divine sonship. And in Jeremiah, it says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. It's not your worth is your work. And with a utilitarian, like, I'm only valuable if I'm useful, especially if you're of old age or if you're, again, your health is declining and you can't work as you once did, that can be really an attack on your identity. You need to be careful and watch out for that, like especially if the evil one comes in or you're hearing that lie, like, I'm only valuable if I can work, I'm only valuable if I'm useful, and you're not. St. John Paul II was a man of such vigor and energy and strength, and when he was an athlete, he was a skier, and when his body was failing with Parkinson's, and you could tell like he just couldn't be as active as he wanted to, or he couldn't work in the way he used to, he offered that up. He offered that sacrifice up, and knowing that I'm a beloved son of the Father, like that is who I am first. Jobs come and go, my health may come and go, and who I am underneath is so much more than just my work. So absolutely get on it, hustle, provide, work hard for your family, bring your passion to your work. It's not necessarily you're always going to be passionate like with your job. There's days where it's a job and days you've got to will the effort, and you may be in a time of life where this is a transitory job. This is not maybe a career for you. This is, I'm just doing this to pay through college loans or debt, or you're just in a season where I'm taking what I can. But bring that passion to your work and know that you are more than just this job. Don't identify with that. Rest in the love of the Father, who loves you for you, not for what you provide or how useful you are. Thank you for watching. I hope these are blessing you. From all of us at Ascension Presents, God bless.
All right. Well, interesting message, and so true, isn't it? That we don't really know. Our identity isn't a lot of times what we think it is until what we do identify with it is taken away. And so hopefully that blessed you in focusing on really what the true identity is, and it is what God has created in you. And God doesn't make junk, as people have said. So hopefully we can feel blessed about that. So let's move on to our keynote this morning, Mr. David 𝙤𝙤. David is got significant experience in this part of life. He is a principal in 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤 and Underberg and Associates, a firm that he has been a principal at for many years, and is a great speaker, knows this space very, very well, and is going to be talking about impression management, which is so critical in job search. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what David has to say for us this morning, and would like to welcome David and turn it over to you. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Skip. Good morning, Harry in the background. Thank you so much for the intro, for including me. Skip, thank you for your message. And Bobby, I don't think you're monitoring this, but thank you for your message as well. So great to hear that. It is truly an honor for me to be part of this presentation this morning. So thank you, Crossroads, for inviting me. I'm amazed by the resources and the messages that Crossroads provides. So what a wonderful opportunity for everybody participating, and I'm honored to be part of this. By way of background, and Skip got into a little bit of this, my whole background, and part of the reason I'm here today, has been matching people and jobs. That's all I've really ever done. I started in corporate life long ago and far away, and worked with Farm Credit, Honeywell, and the Pillsbury Company, and worked in what we called at that point the staffing function. We didn't call it talent acquisition or anything fancy. I ran the talent function, or the staffing function, if you will, for the Pillsbury Company in my last corporate job. Then moved into more of an entrepreneurial world and worked in the outplacement space, working with people who were in transition on helping them get reemployed. Did that for about 7 years, then opened up my search firm. And I'm laughing because Skip was trying to got my name correct, but the last names of my firm, I think we just picked the 3 last names that were the hardest to pronounce and spell: 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤, Underberg and Associates. We always joke about the fact that the 𝙤𝙤𝙤s need to buy a vowel, I need to buy a consonant, and we still would have challenges. So That's why I typically just go by David. Anyway, it is an honor to be here. Before I share my slides, I just want to mention that there will be Q&A throughout. So if you have questions, please put them in chat for now. I will do all questions at the end as well. But if I say things that are of value to you and you have questions, please ask the question as it comes up. So I like to do that live, and I don't remember who, but either Skip or Harry will be monitoring the chat. So hopefully you can all see the presentation I have up. The title is Impression Management plus Zoom, and I put still. As we sit in a world that is beginning to open up, we are not fully open. And it's interesting, I go from here, a Zoom presentation, to a live meeting with a group that hasn't met live for 3 years. We still have to make impressions. We still have to do it in multiple different ways. That's what our focus is going to be today. In the 10th grade, I was sitting in English class on my first day of school in 10th grade. And I used to think I was really good at doing bird calls and not getting caught. And for years, I had done bird calls, and to my knowledge, had never been caught. But I'm doing bird calls from the back of the class, being just a little disruptive. And the teacher, God love her, pointed out that she heard the bird calls, pointed to me and said, "David, you never get a second chance to make a first impression." I fought like heck that entire academic year to get a decent grade in her class. I got a B. I was thrilled I got a B. I was being watched the whole time because I had really made a mistake. I made a bad first impression. What we are going to talk about today is the multiple opportunities each and every one of us has to make that first impression. So we're going to talk about the introduction we have about ourselves. We're going to talk about the physical when we are with each other. We're going to talk about how we sound on the phone. We're going to talk about Zoom when we're present from here up. We'll talk about that in just a moment, or a few moments. We're going to talk about resumes and LinkedIn and that type of impression, the written impression, if you will, without you being present, and then what happens when you reach out through LinkedIn. We'll talk about emails, and we'll get into a little bit on social media beyond and with LinkedIn. Again, I want to encourage everybody to ask questions in chat as they have them. I really want to make sure you do that. This is an ancient cartoon. You can tell it by the outfits and the two gentlemen who are saying, I've got an elevator pitch, an escalator pitch, and just to be safe, a stairway pitch. What's an elevator pitch? An elevator pitch, we always talk about that. People should have that ready. An elevator pitch is what we say to people when they say, tell me about yourselves. And while I love Bobby's message about not just identifying with our job, if we are in transition, we do need to talk about, in some cases, what our job is and what we want to do and how we identify within our profession, although we'll talk about not doing that in a couple of moments as well. There's a wonderful book that's been updated multiple times called How to Work a Room that has some interesting pearls of wisdom that I want to talk about. And the first piece, as we talk about just a general impression management when we're out with people on Zoom or other, is the importance of planning your presence. Hopefully everybody here this morning is here because they really want to be. There's some sort of need, and hopefully they get some sort of value out of the words from Skip and great message, the message from Bobby, whatever I might be able to say. But you need to really start with a positive attitude. You need to go into it saying, I'm going to be here as an open mind. If I learn one nugget, if I get one idea, that'll be great. Start with that positive attitude. And you can do that with anything, whether you are going to a social event, a business event, something at your church, whatever you need to do, you need to start with a positive attitude and go into it that way. You need to focus on the benefits of that particular event. The reason I talk about this, for 22 and a half years, up until 5 years ago, my wife worked as a professional firefighter. She literally ran into burning buildings for a living. And she worked for the City of Plymouth Fire Department, a marvelous fire department. When we went to events through the fire department, I was the only male in the room that ran out of burning buildings, not into burning buildings. And I would go in looking at all these heroes, my wife and others, and she was just one of a few females that chose this profession. And I realized I need to focus on the benefits of this event. And the best part of these events, by the way, were the people that I met and the stories that I heard. And frankly, to this day, some of our dearest friends are people we met through the firefighter events. But I had to focus on it, not the fact that I was the only different male in the room, but that these were great people who all did things outside of firefighting, and we got to know each other really well. We need to plan and practice our self-introduction. We don't want to start doing an introduction the first time cold. We truly want to practice this. When people say, tell me about yourself, or tell me about you, David, or Skip, or Harry, whomever, your first word should not be You really need to practice. And you need to practice it for the different environments you're going to be in. If I'm in a professional association meeting, and that's one that I'm going to later on today, I will start with the fact that I own a retained executive search firm. If I'm at a more social event, I'm going to talk about the fact that I'm a proud grandfather and father and spouse. There are different things I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to practice it. We also need to prepare our small talk. What are we going to talk about when things get quiet? There are a couple of rules in this regard. One of which is do not talk about politics. Sadly, working across the aisle, I think the way things are supposed to happen, is no longer considered popular. So let's just not talk about a divisive topic such as politics. In Minnesota, the weather is either hot or cold. Let's go somewhere else. I encourage you to, we'll talk about this in a moment, look at the popular press, what's out there in the news, not the first page, but sometimes go to the back page. I will encourage you to Google News of the Weird. It's now branded under the name Shepherd Express. And it talks about weird stories that happen in varying places in the globe. They're hysterical stories that can be fun. So prepare your small talk so you know what you are going to talk about. The handshake. I'm not shaking anybody's hand this morning. Well, I'm not until a 10 o'clock meeting, at which point my handshake will be back. Now, some people will fist bump, some people will sort of wave, some people will handshake, but we need to practice it. And we all know what it felt like when we got a handshake from someone who had a weak or limp handshake or a very, very wet hand. We need to practice that. And we need to practice eye contact and a smile. Eye contact on Zoom is actually talking to the camera lens. We'll come back to that. And a smile is universal. We always need to make sure we have a smile. We'll talk more about that later. Staying with this particular book, Susan, the author, talks about 3 roadblocks to working a room, and these are all in the negative. So don't talk to strangers is not correct. We need to go up to people and introduce ourselves. And that goes to the second bullet point, way to be properly introduced. We have probably all walked into a professional association meeting or maybe even a social gathering where we knew nobody. That is not necessarily a comfortable feeling, and I'm an extrovert. I love meeting people, but it's not comfortable when you walk into a room and you look around and there is not a face that you recognize. There are a lot of friendly faces, but it's not a face that you recognize. My suggestion on this, in terms of don't talk to strangers and wait to be properly introduced, and a bit on good things come to those who wait, is go up to someone who looks equally shell-shocked by not knowing anybody else in the room. Someone who is sitting alone, maybe someone who is playing on their phone and pretending to do emails or texts or whatever, and go up to them and say, "Hi, my name is David 𝙤𝙤. I don't know anybody here. May I ask your name? What brings you here?" Something along those lines. That person is likely to be as uncomfortable as you. They'll say, "Hi, my name is Skip," or "My name is Harry," or "My name is Jane," or whatever it happens to be. And I don't know anybody here either. And you start talking, you start bonding over the fact that you two are uncomfortable. That may sound really strange, but you bond over that. The two of you start laughing about the fact that that was really uncomfortable to do, and you look for a third person that you go up to and say, "Hi, we've been friends for 30 seconds now. This is Jane, I'm David. Who are you? We didn't know anybody when we walked in here." And you create your own social group in that particular setting. It is a wonderful way to get to know people and meet different folks. And while this topic is not really going to get into networking, the most powerful networks exist with people from different backgrounds. If we all hang out with people in the same profession or industry, our network is very, very narrow. When we meet people from different backgrounds and get to know them, our network actually is much better. And networking is the most common way people find new positions. Lively conversations. How do we keep a conversation going? Every morning, and I'm one of those very weird morning people that gets to the office around 5:30 in the morning. I love coffee. It is legal and a drug. I read Fox and CNN. That way I figure if I average the two, I might get close to what's going on in the world. I read the Star Trib. I check out my Facebook feed to see what my friends and family might have been doing overnight or in the last day, because I check it for 5 minutes every morning and then I am done. But you need to read what's out there. I also, by the way, check LinkedIn and check the feed there to see what is going on. I have a meeting later on today that actually the speaker is going to be talking about new networking ideas. And I can't wait to see her. But there was an article on networking that I ran into yesterday. And while I didn't clip it, I did indeed bookmark it in my phone, so that if it comes up, I could send it to her. It's an interesting piece. They're the kind of things that you want to be able to do. So if you see something interesting about a company or a meeting or a person that's coming up on your calendar, clip it, collect it, use it later. Reading newspapers is lovely. I encourage you all, especially if you're in transition, to read newsletters and journals for your industry and your particular professional designations. So if you're in HR, I still consider myself in that group. If you're in finance, marketing, whatever it happens to be, read newsletters for your particular professional group, but also for your industry to keep what's going on. Take note and take notes. One of the things that I do after every meeting is actually put something in a notepad or send myself an email with follow-up items, with items that I need to check out. That way I don't forget. If I send myself an email or a text, it is the best way to have a living reminder that I need to be doing something. If I'm supposed to follow up on something, if someone says, "Hey, send me a resume, send me information on your company. I'm really curious about how to get into the fire department, have your wife call me." I take notes so that I can follow that up. Humor. What is AT&T? Appropriate, tasteful, and tactful. I really want each and every one of you to pre-check out any funny story you're going to tell with people that will give you honest feedback. There is nothing worse than using something that is inappropriate, not tasteful, not tactful. In this world, sadly, we are likely to offend someone. Please check things out before you just assume you are hysterical. My 3 adult children are going to be my toughest critics. God love them all. They are phenomenal young professional adults with great families as well. And if I want to run a story by them before I test it out, they are my biggest and best critics. And then listen actively. Sometimes the people we refer to as the best conversationalists are indeed the quietest people in the room. They're the ones who say, "Tell me about yourself. Oh, that is so interesting. How did you get into that? Can you tell me more about that?" And then they shut up. They simply listen actively. And at the end of a meeting or at the end of a benefit banquet or whatever it happens to be, people say, "Wow, that person was so interesting and attentive." And what they did is they listened. Listening actively and responding accordingly is a great way to be viewed as a lively conversationalist. I want to change the first impression now to something a bit more physical. Studies pre-pandemic, so before we introduced Zoom, studies pre-pandemic talked about the impression we make on people in the first 5 minutes, even if we already know them. That in the first 5 minutes, we are judged 60% on our physical appearance, and you are judging me from here up. So you know that I've got a dress shirt on, a sport coat, a flag lapel pin. That's pretty much what you know about me. You know that I am follically challenged. You know that I wear glasses. You know that I'm in an office setting. I'm judged that way by my physical appearance. For the first 5 minutes, that's even if you know me. 33% is how we sound, and only 7% in the first 5 minutes is based on content. You need to understand that. Now let's talk about Zoom. We are all attending through technology, and I have 2 pictures of people on the left side of the slide, one of which is only being viewed from here up. So this particular individual is wearing a dress shirt, is wearing a sport coat, and hopefully shorts, but we don't know what he's wearing below the waist because he's not visible below the waist. Joe Smith just has his name, and Joe is what I call camera negative. He has chosen not to be visibly present, something that is, I guess, his choice. So we can't do that. We don't know what Joe is doing. Joe could be on a second Zoom meeting. Joe could be taking a shower and not even there. Joe could be going to get a cup of coffee. Joe could be incredibly attentive and taking notes. We don't know. But we do have an impression of Joe. We just don't know what it is. And because we don't know what it is, that is our impression. So let's talk a little bit about Zoom. You're all on it, and it is indeed here to stay. March 16th of 2020 is the day I consider, not trying to be funny, COVID day. It was the day I told my staff at my company, go home for 2 to 3 weeks. Let's just get this behind us. Now, obviously, I'm not good at predicting the future. I didn't see a live person in my office for the next 21 weeks. Regardless, at the time COVID started, Zoom was doing about 3 million hours a week of meetings. Within just a couple of months, they were doing 300 million hours of meetings per week just on Zoom. That is not including Teams, Google Meet, so on and so forth. The technology is incredible. It really has made our life very efficient. We were talking this morning, Harry, Skip, and I, about the fact that this group gets people from outside the Twin Cities, some from outside the country, that are able to Zoom on in and hear a presentation that they wouldn't have been able to hear otherwise. With that all said, relative to the other technology we're accustomed to using, Zoom and Teams are in their infancy relative to other, again, technology. A couple of things you need to remember. You are always visible if you are camera positive. So if the first person on the picture on the top left gets up, we all know that he is not wearing anything business appropriate from the waist down. He could be in a pair of lovely shorts, but probably not great for a business meeting. So remember, you are always visible. Even when you're not talking, if you're just listening, you need to recognize that that camera is on you. You need to think like an engineer. So I'm again going to go to that first picture. Unless he's got a camera mounted somewhere that I don't see it, it looks like he is on a laptop or on a small screen. Thinking like an engineer means that you need to somehow figure out how to get your camera to be at eye level. Now, because we can't see, you can't see my computer setup right now. You don't know if I'm on a laptop, on a desktop, where my camera is, so on and so forth, but my camera lens is purposely set at eye contact. Talking to the camera is indeed eye contact, excuse me. So put something under your computer. At home, my wife and I actually have something we call Zoom Tupperware. It is a piece of Tupperware that we determined is the exact right height to put under our laptop. So if we are having a meeting, either of us from a business or nonprofit perspective, or having a Zoom happy hour with friends, we can put this Tupperware under our computer, and our laptop camera lens is at the exact right height. We've now gotten to a point where this Tupperware no longer is used for leftovers. We actually wrote on it with a Sharpie, Zoom Tupperware do not use, and have a cute little picture of Zoom. You're always visible, so you need to know your background. I know I'm in my office. I know what's in my background. I was doing a Zoom happy hour early in the pandemic with a client. We were celebrating the end of a successful search, and her husband walked by her behind her in his gym shorts. I thought it was hysterical. She did not find the same humor in it. Always know what's going on behind you. If you are doing a Zoom interview or a Zoom networking meeting, understand that doing it from a quiet place should not include your bedroom with an open closet, your bedroom with an unmade bed. Think about what people are seeing. If you're doing it from your kitchen and there's a view into your guest bathroom, please close the door if nothing else. So know what's there. Virtual backgrounds. A lot of people prefer to use virtual backgrounds. You can see that I do not. The reason is that's actually the weakest part of the Zoom technology. It used to be security. We used to talk about meetings getting Zoom bombed. But right now, it's the virtual background. And the problem with a virtual background, if you just use the standard one, if you move back and forth, or if you talk with your hands, you lose parts of your face, you lose parts of your fingers. And so it's more distracting than it is of value. So I recommend not using it. If you do, make sure you practice that so you know that your ears are visible. If you do speak with your hands, that your hands are not disappearing. And while I've said this multiple times, talk to the lens. It is indeed eye contact. That is going to be the most important thing you can do. Okay. There is a TV show that I have never watched called The Voice. And I've never watched it just because it's never been convenient and it's never been that compelling for me. Nonetheless, The Voice is the impression we make when we are on a phone, or the impression we make if we choose to be camera negative but are talking in an interactive meeting. The same study that said we're judged 60% based on how we look talked about the first 5 minutes of interaction. We're judged 70% based on how we sound. Are you articulate? Are you using your voice appropriately? Only 30% of how you are judged is based on content. 70% indeed is on your voice. It is going to be important if you are on a Zoom interview or a phone interview, and if it's Zoom and you're camera negative, if it's phone, they're not going to see you, that you have some sort of good hands-free setup. If no one's seen you, you can go with headphones and a microphone and look like you're flying a plane. No one will see it, and it may be the best thing to do. You do not want to be holding a phone while you're talking. And the reason you don't want to be is you can't be as natural if your hand is stuck. You can't be as flowing in your conversation. You want to make sure they hear you appropriately. So please do so appropriately. The written impressions. There are so many different written impressions. And we're going to start with resumes and your LinkedIn profile. Volumes and volumes and volumes have been written, books and books and books on resumes. I've got a couple of different authors that I follow on LinkedIn. It is amazing what is out there, and I am not in the next few minutes going to make you a resume or LinkedIn expert. What I'm going to do is toss you some options to think about and maybe make you think about something you've been doing for a long time that might need to change. First and foremost, once you've been out of college for a couple of years, don't feel obligated to stay with that one-page resume. Every college career services office that I know, and I used to do college recruiting when I was at Farm Credit, Honeywell, and Pillsbury long ago, and I still interact and do presentations on college campuses. Every career services office wants the students to try and get to a one-page format. And they prefer it to be a certain way. Education on top, any experience, activities, so on and so forth. Please, once you're experienced a couple of years, feel free to go to 2 pages. I'll even go to 3 sometimes, although I prefer 2. And education should drop below experience once your experience exceeds a few years. There are multiple different formats, and you need to think about what those formats are. Chronological is really reverse chronological, and it's the most common format if you want to stay doing what you're doing from a professional or profession standpoint. So if you're in marketing and you want to continue in marketing, a chronological interview tells a story. It's written from the back to the front. Most recent is first, least recent is last. So you're reading the most common job or the most current job first. It is a resume that is very well accepted by employers, by recruiters. It is an easier resume to write, and it is indeed the most common. A functional resume has nothing to do with timelines, but a functional resume actually talks about the skills that you have: communication, management, financial, whatever. And you can put examples within each of those functional areas that may have come from volunteer work or may have come from a previous position. It doesn't need to be the most recent or current role. It's a way of talking about yourself from a skills standpoint. It is a difficult resume to read and understand, and frankly, it's a more difficult resume to write. If you're looking at changing professions, if you're looking at building on some things you did years ago, it might be a way to go. Check out a book that includes a section on functional resume writing. Combination is a functional top with a chronological bottom. Skills to start, and then a timeline on the bottom so people recognize that you have been doing things along the way. An electronic resume is actually a resume that's written for a computer program. It's written so that when you send it to a company that is going to store you in a database, that company can find your keywords. The keywords being really important things relating to what you do for a living. When larger companies, small to medium also use this occasionally, but when larger organizations put you in a database and they have an opening, they will actually go into their database through a computer program and say, okay, we need people that have these words in their resume. And they'll put in up to 40 different words. And the database best matches resumes in the database to the job opening. It's a really simple matching process electronically. What you need to know, though, is that they're checking your words against words that are probably in the job description. And the words they're checking are commonly nouns. They're not the action verbs we often start a resume with. developed, managed, created. Those are lovely action verbs, but they're typically not what a company is looking for from a keyword match. What I encourage you all to do is find a job description for the position you're applying for, highlight, literally highlight, and you can do it on screen or you can print it out and do it live, the key words, the nouns that are in the job description. Then do the same thing with your resume. Highlight the key words that are in your resume and check out the match. The closer the match, the more likely you are to get a call. It's really that simple. Staying on the left side of the screen of this particular slide, there are two sites that I checked out last week to make sure they still existed. topresume.com, which does, and resume-check.com. They're both systems where you can download your resume and get feedback. It'll check you out for keywords, so on and so forth. I encourage you to do that. Memorable. The resumes I get now seem to love columns. They have information on the left relating to how to find you in education. They have information on the right that is more skills or position-based. Interestingly, the most memorable resumes are the ones that are the easiest to read. I'm not into columns, and frankly, sometimes databases don't do well with columns because they don't know how to grab certain data. So try and keep it simple and go with a basic format. Layout, you do not need to use fancy fonts. You do not need to use lines between each section. I will really want to encourage you to think of a simple layout. Those are the easiest things to do. You want to label your sections, so I can find experience, I can find education, I can find other, whatever you might put, nonprofit activities, so on and so forth. And I encourage you to proofread your resume. That may sound pretty basic, but I want you to proofread your resume or have someone else proofread it. I am not a good proofreader. I want to tell you that I always have someone proofread my resume or my documents before they go out to make sure that I've used the right pronunciation, that I don't have a spelling error that spell check or grammar check did not catch. If you are proofreading your own, whether it's an email or a resume or whatever, read your document backwards. If you read it forwards, your eyes will read groups of words and you'll skip things. If you read it backwards, you're at least reading every word. Resume sections, there is no rule on what sections you should have. An objective does guide someone. A qualification summary gives a person sort of the executive summary of what your background is. If you've changed careers or if you want to highlight things from a different time frame, you can have a related experience section and an other experience section. You don't need to have just one. And one of the things that my clients always want is not just to know you got a degree, but what have you done recently? So you could have a continuing education section, or you could enlarge your education section. What I will tell you, though, is make each word on your resume count. So an objective that simply says, I'm seeking a professional opportunity that includes growth and career development, that doesn't tell me anything. Give me something of value. Now I'm looking because the chat screen popped up. I'm not seeing what it is, but someone has something in chat. If there's a question, Skip or Harry, let me know. Annie Fisher is a columnist and blogger. I have seen her many times in Forbes. She put something out a number of years ago called What's Wrong with Your Resume? Poor formatting is first. What I mean by poor formatting is I can't find things. They're buried. If I want to find how to contact you, putting it in a footer, bottom of a resume is not always the best way to do it. Put it on top where I can find you. If you are bilingual or multilingual, that is important information in this world. Don't bury it and make sure you do include it. I was at a meeting last night. It was really more of a happy hour with a client, and we were talking about some of the. He's the head of HR for one of our clients, and we were talking about some of the resumes that we've gotten. please, 2 or 3 pages is maximum. I did get one resume. It was not an academic CV. It was a resume that was literally 27 pages long. It was for a project management VP. And this person determined that they wanted to show details on every project they've worked on. I never read it. 27 pages is not a great way to present yourself. Editing is a skill. And then personal information. We were laughing last night about the things people do put on their resumes. This is not the time to put personal information. Do not put a picture. Personal information should not be provided. I don't want to know your birthday. I don't want to know your social security number. By the way, I've gotten resumes that way. My favorite example from last evening was married 3 times. That probably isn't the best impression to make. Personal information that isn't relevant to the job is not important, and is actually inappropriate to put. If you do have personal information that's important, most resumes now do not have a physical snail mail address, but if you're applying for something in the Twin Cities and you live in the Twin Cities, you can just put Twin Cities or Minneapolis, Minnesota. That is actually personal information that might be relevant. If you are bilingual or multilingual, that's personal information that is likely relevant. If you have a security clearance, each of my, actually, I have 3 children, 2 adult males, 1 adult female. They're wonderful. The boys both have security clearances for what they do. Put that information out there. That is important information. If you are a CPA, if you are a CMA, if you carry some sort of designation or certification, that information is important. And then Annie talked about something that I thought was so interesting. What's wrong with your resume when you send it for a job that you're not even closely qualified to? I know it's easy to attach and send. It is not the best impression to make. I pulled the most recent LinkedIn list of overused resume phrases that I could find. There is nothing wrong with any of this list. There's nothing wrong with any of the 10 items. However, you need to back them up. So, the word motivated shouldn't tell me that you've been in the, if you use the word motivated in your summary, and then you've been in the same job for the last 27 years, I may question that. If you talk about a track record that you have, but you don't list any accomplishments, I'm going to ask you about your accomplishments. If there's leadership listed, but you don't list the functions or the number of people or the things you have done through your staff, that's going to be an issue. So the words are not the problem. It is what you do to back them up. So please, please, please make sure that whatever you are using shouldn't be a cute catchphrase, but instead actually is something that is related to who you are and you can truly back it up. Emails. I get approximately 160 emails every day. And I would love to tell you, and it would be a lie, I would love to tell you that I'm able to open and read all of them. Many of them go right to spam, and I'm okay with that. And I'm going to give you just a quick momentary lesson on how not to get lost with your email, or frankly, your in-mail. These are actual examples that I get all the time, and I can say as recently, with the exception of the last one, as recently as yesterday. My email address is david@𝙤𝙢𝙥𝙧𝙚. You can guess my first name from that email address. It's David. It's pretty simple. I get emails all the time that say "to whom it may concern" or something very generic. If you want me to open your email, it needs to start with "Dear David" or "David." It shouldn't start with "to whom it may concern." Because I get 160 emails a day, I do not use what is called a preview pane. I only see the subject line and the email address that it was sent from. And they come in date and time order, so I know who was first and who was last, if you will. If the subject line is very generic, resume, your next hire, introduction, my computer is trained to actually send that to spam. They're oftentimes a phishing expedition, PH, phishing, not FI. They are oftentimes people that got my name out of a directory that don't know who I am, but just want to send me their resume. And while it sounds cold and cruel, I do not have the time to really address each and every one of those. If you are attending this event right now, this presentation, and you want to get your resume into our search firm database, use your subject line and simply say, hey, it will be important, excuse me, I apologize. It will be important for you to say, referred through Crossroads or attended your presentation, something in the subject line that actually tells me how you found me. So don't put resume, your next hire, introduction. We were talking about this morning before everybody came online. I have been David my entire life. If you assume the comfortable and call me Dave, that is not going to work for me. That just tells me you do not know me. The other, when I started 𝙬𝙤𝙤𝙕 and Associates, now 𝙬𝙤𝙤𝙕 and Associates, I started it with the Ādlins, Mary and Ken Ādlin. And Ken Ādlin is still my business partner and trusted colleague. Mary has early retired and is just a dear friend. Interestingly, because she is still listed in some directories, I get an email to my email address, but to Dear Mary. You may think that's humorous. There are days I think that's humorous, but it is not going to be an email that gets a lot of positive attention. Last and certainly not least, in terms of what I want to talk about today, is social media. And that gets us into the LinkedIn conversation. I hope all of you professionally have a LinkedIn profile. I also have a Facebook profile, and the two of those are not connected. If you Google me, we'll talk about Googling yourself in a moment, you'll probably get to my Facebook page. It's fine. There's nothing inappropriate on there, thankfully. If you go to my LinkedIn page, you'll find that I post a lot on the economy. Social anthropologists tell us that we can maintain personal relationships, really know about the person, really know about their family, their profession, so on and so forth, for somewhere between 150 and 250 people. Now, we all know a couple of thousand people, but anthropologists tell us that we can't have close relationships with that many more and really keep it up, because there just isn't the time. There are only so many times you can have dinner with someone or a long phone conversation with someone or a meaningful interaction. LinkedIn and Facebook have really gotten us reconnected. I know that my LinkedIn profile has north of 1,000 people that I am friends with. I do not friend candidates, or I do not link to candidates, more correctly. I only link to people that I have known for a long period of time. That works for me. Everybody uses their LinkedIn differently, and I'm not here to tell you what's right or wrong. Facebook are people that I know personally from different parts of my life. Some I went to camp with when I was a kid. Some I went to elementary school with. I'm friends with my third grade teacher because she's amazing. It's very, very different than my LinkedIn page. A lion, by the way, is a LinkedIn open networker who will accept anybody. Some people do that. There is nothing wrong with it. The reason I bring this up, and same thing with Twitter, I do have a Twitter account that I only use for economic updates. The reason I bring up social media is we need to assume that whatever we do on social media is public. Now on Facebook and LinkedIn, with their ever-changing security protocols, it is conceivable that someone you are connected to who has a very, very open security protocol, and they comment on a Facebook post or a LinkedIn post, that allows everybody that is in their, friends and family group to see your stuff. So anytime you are commenting to someone, please recognize that you are dialoguing in front of everybody. If you don't think that's correct, remember Congressman Anthony Weiner, who actually did jail time. He's now out of jail. Remember a group from Harvard about 4 or 5 years ago. They were incoming freshmen, and just before school, they were caught with a secret Facebook group posting things that were inappropriate. That was how they could become members of this special secret group. Each of those students was told by Harvard University they are no longer welcome at the school. So these kids who were clearly academically brilliant and got into Harvard had to tell their parents, by the way, all the work that we did to get me into Harvard has been messed up because I went on a private Facebook group. So please, 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 please be very careful. If you don't get that second chance to make a first impression on social media, it's hard to take things back. On LinkedIn, if you want to send a message to someone or you want to invite them to be on your LinkedIn grouping, a first connection, send them a message. Don't just send them a cold invitation, but send them a note. There are actually studies that talk about the fact that we are more likely to accept someone if the note gives me context. Hey, we met at a professional association meeting, or I'm dear friends of such and so, and she suggested that we get together through LinkedIn. Send that note. If it's just a name and there's no context, it is not, and I don't know who the person is, I can tell you I will not open my LinkedIn world to people I don't know. The other thing I will encourage you to do is Google yourself, and actually do it monthly. Set up a routine where on the first of the month, I Googled myself this morning, by the way, that you actually Google yourself and see what is out there on the first 3 pages. Is there something you should be concerned about? Is there something you should know? What did come up? And the ideal way to do Googling yourself, by the way, is to do it from a computer that doesn't know you well. So if you have a friend that you're not linked to in any way, shape, or form, LinkedIn or Facebook, Google yourself from their computer or ask them to Google you, and you'll do the same for them. They will get a different feed than you will get based on previous searches you have done. Your computer has learned about you. So I will encourage you all to Google yourself. I will also tell you, by the way, I Google my adult children. I occasionally Google my wife as well, just to see what's out there. There was only one time, all my kids are in their 30s. I have a son who is 40 actually also. There's only one time, and it goes back to teenage years for one of my kids, where I had to go and say, please delete something. And thankfully, they were able to do so. With that, let me open it up to any questions you have. I see that the chat number is now 4. So Skip or Harry, I'm not sure who's monitoring this. If you want to help me here, that would be great.
Will do. Thank you, David. Got a few questions. Tanya has asked, she just wrote a little bit here, so I'll read it, but she said, over the past 6 months or so, seen a lot of LinkedIn posts where someone is saying they've been laid off, asking for help, connections, etc. So she had a few questions regarding that. 1, what are your thoughts on that type of a post? And 2, what are your thoughts on being vulnerable like this after saying, a significant time in transition, like months, 7 months or whatever? Does the leadership level matter regarding this post? Not exactly sure what she means by that. The post seemed to get a lot of action. Finally, what do you think about the open to work green circle around your picture? Heard mixed messages.
Wow. So there's vulnerable, there's asking for help, and there's open to work within that question, and then the one part that's unknown. So I'm a believer, well, the statistics bear this out. In the Twin Cities specifically, 70 to 80% of how you're going to find your next job is through your network. If you were in any other large city, Chicago, St. Louis, LA, New York, whatever, it's about 50%. Much higher here because no one moves. We just change employers. We sort of rotate around. We don't change the zip code of our home. We change the zip code of our employer more frequently, but we stay local. So networking and being vulnerable to your network is sort of a yes. I think that's important, but I am a person that would recommend doing a bit more privately. And the reason I do that is not your entire network. While I do believe everybody is created equally, and I mean that sincerely, from a networking standpoint, they are not. Some people are going to be better networkers, they're going to be better friends of yours, they're going to be more helpful, so on and so forth. So I would do it somewhat selectively. I don't think I would go out to the community of LinkedIn and say, I need your advice and counsel. You can do that in LinkedIn messages. You can do that through groups if you've got groups that you want to reach out to, but I'm not sure I would do it to everybody. The experts that I follow on LinkedIn are mixed in terms of that open to work piece. You want people to find you. Open to work is not necessarily the way they find you. They actually find you through keywords, both your employer, so the description you list under your most recent position, the keywords that you have there are going to be more valuable than your open to work. I am not necessarily a fan of advertising that, so I will tend towards no, but there is no good hard data on that for the open to work piece. That was a long rambling answer. I hope I covered Tanya's questions within her question.
I think you have covered it very well, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
If you need any clarification further, Tanya, let us know. And we have a couple short time here. If there are any other questions, now is your chance and opportunity to get someone of David's caliber to answer your own personal question. Virtually once in a lifetime opportunity, people. So don't miss this chance. But fantastic information. And if you need any clarification on anything David said or have questions about anything, let's see here. I have a question from John. With 30 years of experience, is combo resume the way to go?
Repeat that. Did you say is 30 years of experience is a chronological the way to go?
He said combo.
Combo. Thank you. And I'm going to say it depends. Now that's a consultant answer. The reason I'm going to say it depends, if the person is looking at focusing on some of the experiences they got earlier in their career, that doesn't necessarily need to be 30 years ago, but maybe it's 10 years ago, then a combination resume where you're giving some information on skills may indeed be the way to go. I am not a person who will recommend you put 30 years of experience on your resume. I really think you need to sort of cap it at 15 at most. That typically is the case. I also don't want to see a resume. Sadly, age discrimination exists in this world. And we can get into a long debate on that and what we should put on a resume and what we shouldn't. But if I put 1999 versus the year 2001 on my resume, 1999 is 10 years earlier than 2001. Yes, I know mathematically that is not correct, but I also know that that is really an impression management piece. I got my college degree, I'll be bold and tell you, in 1979. Think about computers at that point, which were really very different. In 1979, the things that I learned in college, while still valuable, have really very little relevance today to an employer. I don't list the fact on my LinkedIn profile or anywhere else that I got my degree in 79. It doesn't matter, but I have a degree. That's where continuing education becomes more important. So I would say from a chronology standpoint, don't include the 30 years. The original question was combination. If you want to sell some of the skills you got or really highlight some of the different skills you have within your jobs, a combination resume is a nice way to go. The timeline helps comfort the reader that you haven't been in prison for the last 10 years and not working.
Excellent. Thank you, David. I also got a college degree. I actually graduated in the half of the class that made the upper half possible. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Love it.
David or John had a, he asked about how many years of experience. I believe you said 15. Shouldn't go over that in the resume.
You know, opinions vary on that, but you don't need to go to 30. You don't even need to go to 20.
Got it. Jason is popping in with the question, what about LinkedIn? Would you also limit experience, etc., to the last 10 to 15 years there as well?
LinkedIn is in many ways a mini version of your resume. It should not be as detailed as your resume. It should not have a link to your resume. You really want to control where your resume goes and how it gets there. I would say LinkedIn should have the same years of experience that your resume does. So if you've got 15 on your resume, go 15 on LinkedIn. By the way, please make sure that dates and titles on LinkedIn are the same as the dates and titles on your resume. So we actually do check to make sure, and we very often find someone who is a VP on their resume and a director on LinkedIn or vice versa, and we need to find out why. We don't understand that. Or the years, one says to present and one says to 2022. We need to understand why, and one of those things isn't true. So do make sure that those two things actually line up, just less detail on LinkedIn.
Great, thank you, David. Brian has a question. He says, the tell me about yourself question. Can you touch on that more? What content is the interviewer truly looking for on this question? The question seems very open in nature, but what is important here in answering this?
Great question. It also is a question that is the most confusing, and I'm not sure why it's used, but it's considered the most common question in interviewing. So tell me about yourself. I would recommend you answer it with a question. Is there a certain area you would like me to focus on relating to experience, education, or the accomplishments I'm most proud of? And then be quiet and see where they take you. If they say, we're going to leave it to you, I would go with a no longer than 2-minute, time yourself, use your video camera, which is also your phone, use a camera to time yourself and see what really 2 minutes is, but don't go over 2 minutes, and do a quick, if you're looking to define me from a career standpoint, my career started in human resources. I moved into the outplacement and retained search profession. Academically, while my degree is in industrial psychology, my most recent continuing education is focused on the following. What I'm most proud of is XYZ. Done. Let them follow up from there. But I would answer it first with a question.
Excellent. That is, man, I can tell you've done this a time or two, David.
Just once. Just once today.
Very impressive. I love it. Okay, our last question, and as we're at time here, but John asked, how best should you represent experience of 15 plus years ago? How best should we communicate with recruiters in person, virtually, recruiters accessible without pursuing a particular position?
There are a couple of questions within that as well. What I recommend to people, if they want to highlight different companies they were a part of, different industries they were a part of, different experiences that they had, they can cover a lot of time by saying additional experience in the areas of X, Y, and Z after that 10, 15, or whatever years of experience they've actually chronologically listed and detailed on their resume. So it's very, very easy for them to say additional experience in X, Y, Z and let someone cover that. How to build a relationship with a recruiter is an interesting question. We work on behalf of the employer, and that's an important thing to know. And while we want to know you, we're not going to be able to spend a lot of time with you if your background doesn't fit the type of work we do or the type of openings we're really focused on right now. I would recommend a soft introduction with a personalized email, not an in-mail, but a personalized email. And we'll include you if, again, if it's one of those, hey, was attending your Minnesota Crossroads Career Network presentation, we're going to include you in our database and reach out to you appropriately. We'll respond to you and let you know that. But I would not expect a personal meeting, just not that we don't want to meet with you, time does not allow. Skip, I know we're at time. I put this slide up, which is the open slide. It's got my email address, david@𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤.com. If you have questions that weren't addressed, email me. Subject line, Minnesota Crossroads, follow-up question in the subject line. Send me the question. I will answer it. It may not be today, but I will do my best to get it to you as quickly as possible. So don't be shy.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, David. That was excellent information as usual. And it will help so many of the many folks that joined us here online this morning. So blessings for the rest of your day. And thank you for sharing your, as Anita said, pearls of wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me, and honored to be part of this. And Skip and Harry, calling me at any time.
Thank you, David. We really appreciate that very much.
Bye now.
Very much. Okay, well, we will dive into resources that Minnesota Crossroads has for you. I'm going to share my screen and bring up, going through some of the things that are available, of which there are many. Let's see here if we can get this to come up okay. Harry, can you tell me if that came up okay? I'm not able to tell if it is sharing properly.
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. All right, try again. Why is that not coming up? But the bottom line is that Crossroads has got tons of resources for you available to help in your job search. I know when I was in my job search, I'd never looked for a job. I had started my own company out of college. And so I really had no idea what to do or what to look for, or really what resources there were available. And I was pleasantly surprised to find out there's really a ton of them, ton of resources out there. And Minnesota Crossroads is just one, but there are some really, really cool things available. And if I can get my slides to share, I will show them to you. I don't know why it is not sharing. Let's see here. Well, I know the I know the drill pretty well, so I can go through without visually showing you and at least let you know about the things that are available. So I will do that, and just bear with me. I apologize. I won't have the lovely slides to impart to you, but basically there is a ton of stuff out there, and you're not in this alone. I talked this morning about working your faith muscle, and job transition is certainly an opportunity to do that. We are tested, certainly. But Minnesota Crossroads is kind of based out of Grace Church in Eden Prairie. We also are connected with Woodbury Lutheran Church in Woodbury and North Heights Lutheran in Arden Hills. And when we were in person, we had meetings at all three of those venues. Everything is virtual now, but we are looking forward to hopefully getting back in person, maybe as soon as August, fingers crossed. But we would love to get back to together with everyone. Basically, a resource that you should all be tying into is www.mncrossroads.com, www.mncrossroads.com. It is chock full of information about what's going on in Crossroads, events, resources, and jobs. There are jobs that are being sent into us every day, almost every day, but certainly every week, and they're posted there. So certainly look at that resource for jobs and other resources for you in your search. We also have ongoing opportunities for you in your job search on a weekly basis. There is a great networking group that meets right after this meeting goes from 9 to 11, called Networking with Grace. And Wes Tang has been running that group for over a decade. Wes Roper is involved. Great networking group. You sign up for it the same place you signed up for this meeting, and they will send you the link. There's no cost involved. You also get a roster of all the attendees, so it really helps with networking with them. It's a great networking group. We also have one-on-one coaching available. So if you would like to engage with a coach, specific questions like kind of went over with David this morning about LinkedIn or about your resume, or do a mock interview, or whatever you might want as far as specific questions to your job search, we've got a whole group of really, really good coaches from vast different backgrounds and career paths that are available to you just on request. So you can get that there also. We also have a prayer group. And so there are people praying for you that you don't know. Even if you don't ask for it, they're praying for you. We are big believers in prayer. But if you have a specific prayer request that you would like, certainly submit it, and we will pray on that. We also got kind of online classes at Grace, at Crossroads. It's a 8-week program, really detailing every element of job transition that you can imagine. Again, when I was in transition, I never even looked for a job since I'd started and run my own company for almost 30 years. So I had no idea what to do. I just kind of thought I'd be out there, and because I was so amazing that people would just run to me with jobs, and that didn't happen. And so the class goes through every element, from attitude to negotiating to interviewing, resumes, targeting companies, anything you can imagine. It breaks down, and you go through with a group of people. There is a leader, and they will take you through this process. So you go through it with others that you can kind of commiserate with, and also get a lot of good information. So highly recommend that. We also have a LinkedIn group, MN Crossroads Career Network. Alumni stay involved. They're at companies all over the place. So it might be your targeted company that you could find a Crossroads alumni there. And trust me, people that have been through job transition are great people to connect with, because they get it. They know the challenges and frustrations of transition, and I have found, are very willing to help, because they know how tough it can be, and they want to help you get through that. So it's a great resource on LinkedIn. Make sure you join that LinkedIn page. We also have a fantastic deal where we have got a YouTube page, MN Crossroads Career Network YouTube page, and it is chock full of presentations just like you saw this morning. David's presentation was fantastic, and if you're like me, you're trying to take notes, probably missed some things. Well, that will be posted on our YouTube channel, as are a number of other wonderful presentations that are available to you free of charge whenever you want them. So just go onto the YouTube channel, pop some popcorn. What a perfect Friday night for you and your significant other. No, not really. Don't even try. But it is good, even if it's not Friday night material. But use it. It's a treasure chest of information, great topics, great speakers. So make sure you utilize that. As far as additional resources, I'm very proud that my company, Thrivent Financial, has been a longtime supporter of Minnesota Crossroads. We believe in the mission, we believe in what it does, and we wholeheartedly support it. There are other companies that also support, and there's a lot of people that supports. Harry has put together a really impressive group of people that are very passionate about helping you in your job transition. One of the things that I was asked to do is put together some workshops on financial challenges in job transition specifically. And you can sign up for those. They're on the first, second, and third Tuesdays of the month. Again, signing up on the same place you signed up for this event. Love to have you and really dive down into an area that can be a little scary in job transition, the financial issues, but hopefully we can put some things in place that'll help you have some comfort there and able to focus on your job search and not be worried about the financial side of it. I mentioned the team that was put together. There's probably, I don't know, 30, 40 of us, again, all different backgrounds, really, really good folks, all here to serve you. So don't hesitate to reach out. Again, 3 different churches that we're affiliated with in Woodbury, North Heights, and Grace. If you don't have a church home, reach out to one of them. We would love to, I know they would love to see you. And the faith part, as I referenced this morning, is a big deal. We want to work our faith muscle. And so having a church home would certainly recommend, and just lean into God. He has got this. He has got this process, and he has got you in this process. You're not alone. You've got Minnesota Crossroads, and oh yeah, you've got God. So you're not alone. There's a lot of great resources here to help you, and we are thrilled to do that any way that we can. So hopefully you enjoyed the presentation today by David and the other stuff. I will mention the next meeting next Thursday is in the evening from 7 to 8:30. George Murray. You may have heard of George. He's a 2-time best-selling author, specifically in job transition. Great guy, knows his stuff, highly recommended. But again, resources for you. So have a blessed day. So glad you could join us today, and we look forward to seeing you again. Take care.